Doubled up on this guest this week because he's just so darn good. UCFsports.com's Brandon Helwig. Brandon, I was on campus at UCF. 2001 was probably the last time I was on campus here, and I was rolled over by the amount of changes that they made in that's not really that long when you talk about construction and growing a university, but this school, certainly, I think if you were asking who's ready for a Power 5 invite, if you hadn't seen it in a long time, it has been a Power 5 school now for a couple years, and they're just finally now getting to officially say that.
Yeah, you were there, you said 2001. The campus honestly, you could go back and someone who visited in the 80s, the 90s, I think it's always been under construction in one way or another. But really what transformed everything just in terms of, elevating the athletics program, it was two things that happened in 2007. I know I've said this before if anyone's ever listened, but it was opening the on-campus stadium. Back then it was Bright House Network Stadium. Now it's called FEC Mortgage Stadium. I think most of the fans just call it the Bounce House. The stadium opened up in 2007, and at the exact same time, within a month of doing so, UCF also opened a brand new arena on campus. So for the first time, they really had, an elite level, at least, arena facility for basketball. Just, whether the Bounce House is the nicest stadium in the world, probably not, but it's UCF's own stadium. And when you were playing downtown at the Citrus Bowl and just, obviously the program was growing and, started out Division III, 1AA, Division I independent, then all through the various conferences, when you're in the state and there was a so-called Big Three through the years, Florida State, Miami, it's just, even though you had a big enrollment, you're never going to capture all those people that you really should have. But when finally games were on campus, just the amount of campus pride, the amount of students that suddenly were invested in the football program maybe 10 years before. Maybe some of the students, they just would have rooted for FSU or Florida or somebody like that. But now the culture has totally changed on campus. Just that one year with this facilities opening up is really the first step. There's a lot of moments in the journey along the way, but that's the one thing that you can really point to say that's why UCF is in the Big 12 today.
Brandon, for this game tomorrow, Baylor is very much up against the wall. UCF is coming off that loss, but their issues were pretty much on the defensive side of the ball. They were still scoring. Timmy McClain seems to fit in the offense well. What do you think has to happen for UCF to get back on track and jump out and roll in this game like they think they probably can?
Yeah, that game at Kansas State, you can look at it a couple of different ways. Obviously, for a first ever conference game, you're going to the defending conference champs. They return, a whole lot of players from that team. And honestly, I think UCF, I think they really didn't think that K-State starting quarterback Willem Howard was going to play. I don't know if it was, I know he got banged up a little bit at Missouri the week before, and there was a lot of talk that he was maybe on crutches and probably was doubtful, but, he obviously played. I think UCF was kind of anticipating, if not hoping, they were going to play the true freshman quarterback that really doesn't have any experience, Avery Johnson, but, they get into that atmosphere, and for the most part, UCF, went toe-to-toe with K-State for, I'd say, 2.5 quarters or so, three quarters. Well, really, more than that, midway through the fourth quarter, so things got out of hand. UCF's offense can move the ball even without John Rice Plumlee in the starting lineup. Timmy McClain obviously taking over as starter while John Reese heals from a knee injury. But I have no doubt that they can move the ball and score points. It's just how good or how bad is this UCF defense? They really weren't tested in the early part of the non-conference schedule. I know they went up to Boise. They allowed some rushing yards there. And when you got to K-State last week, it just could not get off the field. Just, K-State ran up and down. DJ Giddens, K-State running back, I think he was the Doak Walker National running back of the week, ran for 200-plus yards and 4 touchdowns. That hasn't happened very many times in Kansas State history. We just could not stop him. And I think Kansas State had as many first downs as they've had maybe in 25 years. But that's just one thing that we're going to have to see tomorrow. I obviously, there's quarterback issues again. It seems like every week. I think UCF is probably hoping to see Sawyer Robinson instead of Blake Shapen tomorrow, because I think that's the big question mark for me tomorrow is which UCF defense shows up.
Do you think that last week was an exploitation of a weakness, or was that just something that they were not ready and overmatched because of a strength that Kansas State has?
It might be a little bit of both. It's kind of hard to say right now. I mean, obviously when you get back and, your coordinator did an interview, you ask the players and, in the days that followed after last week, they say, oh, we just stuff that can be corrected. There was some alignment issues here and there, but, we kind of know linebacker at UCF is probably a weakness when you look at, at the entirety of that side of the ball. That's kind of been a weak spot. And the defensive ends maybe didn't play very well in doing their jobs in containing the run. So, but then again, Kansas State should be. I know a lot of people looked at that game against Missouri and thought, they should have won that game and everything else. I think maybe people kind of lulled on K-State a little bit. They should be, honestly, a top 3 or 4 team in the Big 12. That's where they were predicted coming in. They still, may end up in that championship game. So I guess we'll find out tomorrow whether it was more K-State or more bad UCF defense.
So, for this one tomorrow, Baylor, I'll just tell you, Baylor, they just have not been able to do anything right. What's been your perspective on Baylor?
I was, as you're coming into it, I try to watch as much Big 12 football last year as I could, but obviously didn't pay as much of attention with UCF not in the league. I did watch the most of the Texas State game on ESPN Plus. That's one thing I love sometimes with UCF. They only have the one Thursday game in the opener. That frees up your Saturday to watch other teams. And I think every game UCF is going to play from here on out is on a Saturday. But I did watch most of that game, and I was just surprised because I was intrigued a little bit because G.J. Kinney, the head coach at Texas State, he's a former UCF coach. He was part of Gus Malzahn's first staff here a couple years ago, and obviously he was at Incarnate Word last year as the head coach, moved on to Texas State for this year. And so I'm just kind of curious, just there's a few UCF ties on that staff, and just kind of wanted to see. And I think I was flipping around other games, and when I realized Texas State was kind of taking it to Baylor, I was like, "Whoa, I got to watch this game." And I was just surprised that I know preseason predictions don't really mean a hill of beans, but I know no one expected Texas State to be that good, or maybe Baylor to start off that slug. I did not see as much of the Utah game as I would have liked. I think I saw maybe the last few minutes on streaming in the hotel before I headed over to Boise State for that one. But I just was surprised, honestly, been surprised at the one. I mean, having to play Texas, that I'm not surprised at that result. I just, sometimes it seems like with the Big 12, you never know what you're going to get year to year. I don't think people predicted the kind of year TCU had. I don't know if people would have predicted the year, Baylor had 2 years ago, especially coming off 2020 and the first season under Dave Aranda. So there's always a team that surprises. And, I looked at Baylor's schedule and just seeing how it laid out. Yeah, I know they had, Utah in the non-conference. They had to open up the conference with Texas, but there's 8 home games in there. That's unprecedented. Not many teams play 8 games at home. So when you look at how everything broke down, you kind of think, well, that could be a big advantage. That could be, 1 or 2 more wins than they otherwise would have got. So I kind of, thought Baylor could be sort of a dark horse candidate in the Big 12. Of course, obviously, Blake Shapen, not having him available, since that season opener might have a little bit to do with where that record is. But yeah, I think like most everyone else, we're kind of surprised at that 1-3 start.
Brandon Helwig, UCFsports.com. Brandon, thanks so much for hopping on. Sorry about the traffic you got stuck in. I feel responsible for that.
That's all right. I live about with traffic. It's it's not like some small college town where everyone's 5 minutes away. I don't live super far, but with traffic on a Friday afternoon, I'm probably about 40 minutes away right now. And I realize, man, by the time I get there, you're going to be almost done. So I'm glad we were able to chat on the phone.
Absolutely. Thanks for hopping on. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. I'll see you tomorrow at the game.
Okay, man. Thanks. See you tomorrow.
All right. Brandon Helwig, UCFKnights.com. And